Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster, and this is number 7 out of 10 in our Permission to Play video series. And today's card sketch that we'll be working with is what I've called a dynamic diagonal. So it is using a strip of cardstock that's been embossed in a diagonal orientation across the card to just create some extra interest. Then using a die cut sentiment to give a grounding place for your focal point image. And that will probably make more sense as we go forward. So before we start, again, give yourself permission to play. If you need to repeat after me, you can. I know I have to tell myself this. It's okay to make simple cards. It's okay to do the same sketch and layout over and over. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's okay to mix old and new products. It's okay to be creative and not productive, so working in batches. You don't have to sit down and make one card from start to finish. And that I will not compare my cards to other people's cards. My recipients don't do that, and it just makes it less fun. Now, 3 hacks for making simple cards you're proud of, and for me are embossing folders, quality images, and strong colors. So we'll be doing all 3 of those in these cards. So here's a look at that sketch that I was talking about. We're using that embossing folder in a diagonal orientation, and that just adds a lot of interest right there. So if you haven't seen my prep video for all 10 of these card sketches, I'll link that for you down below, but I have an envelope for each card sketch. So this is number 7, and I prep about 3 or 4 cards for each sketch, but you could do that however you want. Maybe you want to do 1 sketch a month and you want to make 10 cards with it. Maybe you just want to make 1 card for each sketch. Maybe you just want to pick out a favorite and make that one till you're bored. You can do it however that you would like to do it, but this is just what I find right now that works well for me. I have all of those elements ready, and now I'm going to do some batch stamping. So I love this stamp. This is from the new set from Penny Black, Little Guy. Really great stamps if you want to make masculine cards or little boy cards. They're so cute. They're really fun to make, and I think you could use them for any special guy in your life. I have also stamped I'm So Cute. That is a old woodblock stamp, but it's classic. And I've die cut this ascending die. So another reminder, we do have an ebook available with all of these sketches inside of it, along with the card ideas we're making in each video. And if you'd like to purchase that, I will link that for you down in the YouTube description box below. Thank you so much for your support. Now I've done my batch stamping, I'm going to move on and paint everything at the same time. So I'm using Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors, and I've got them on my palette there. I'm also going to take a Memento Toffee Crunch ink pad and press it on an acrylic block. I use that for light tan or even skin tone, just for these very simple images. I just like to keep everything simple and easy. And I also have a cup of water, and as you can see, a well-used paper towel there. So when I go off camera, I am dipping my paintbrush and rinsing it off in that water cup, patting it onto the paper towel so that it's not too wet before I go in and either blend or pick up a new color. So if you've tried watercoloring and you feel like there is just too much water and you don't have any control, make sure you have a paper towel there. Also make sure your paper towel isn't too wet. Like sometimes I'll set one to the side, I fold it all up and I'll set it to the side. If it feels too wet, let it dry while I use another one. Then you can rotate it back in once it's dry, because if that's too wet, you won't get enough water off of your brush and it will feel like you're bringing puddles to your project. So just a little tip there. Don't underestimate the importance of having that paper towel, at least for me, to pat my brush pretty dry before I go in for color or I go in to do some blending. Now I stamp these using Ranger Archival ink in the color of watering can. So archival just means it's waterproof, and watering can, just like you'd picture a watering can, it's not pitch black. And I like that because I feel like then once these have these strong colors of paint, then the outline lines kind of recede back and it doesn't look so much like a dark black coloring book image. It just looks like a nice hand painted image. Typically my process will be to pick up the Reinker ink out of the palette, as you can see there, and put it down where I want it to be the darkest because that ink is very concentrated there. Then I'm going to take my brush over, rinse it off, pat it on the paper towel, and come back and blend that out into the white. So where I first put the color, it's going to be darker, and as it moves out with that paintbrush that doesn't have any of that concentrated ink on it, then it's going to get lighter. Now I can always go back and put more concentrated color where I want it. I can even lift color. So if I go back with a clean brush that's very dry, I can lift some of that color out as long as it's still wet. While it's still wet, I can also put other colors on top of it if I wanted to mix. I recommend keeping them in the same color family if you're doing that. And I can't remember if I mentioned it in this video or not, but I do have a longer video with frequently asked questions and more detailed instruction about my watercoloring technique, and I'll link that for you down below. So if you have any questions or you just want to see things a little bit slower, then you can check out that video. Now you'll notice, like up on the sail, I have intentionally left some spots white, some little flecks at the edges, not perfectly colored it in. And that is the thing, this is a strong, beautifully illustrated image. It does not need to be perfectly or solidly painted in. It actually, I think, adds to sort of that storybook look if you leave some white at the edges or the tips or in the hair, on the sail. Just little spots like that. It'll just give it kind of that storybook look and add to the character. Now I decided I wanted a little more green up here, so that was dry, and I just dropped in a little bit more green straight from my palette so it was concentrated. Rinsed off my brush, patted it dry, and then went back and blended that. So if you've painted and everything looks very pastel or just isn't popping, especially for a simple card, don't be afraid to go back and just sort of strengthen up, beef up that color a little bit. And I think that is something that helps a lot if you're making a simple card to make it look finished, or like I said, a card that you're proud of when you're all done. Now here is that hello die cut sentiment from Penny Black. It's really great. I like this because you can do hello birthday girl, hello anything. And so it's also great with this sketch to ground those images. So you've got that diagonal embossed background. You need somewhere, I feel like I did, to put whatever I'm stamping, my focal point, and they can just stand on this hello. And that can be popped up and added anywhere along that diagonal background. I hope that made sense. But here I'm just painting it. You could cut this from colored cardstock. I often don't know what color I'm going to want it to be, so I just cut it from that same Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. And again, all the colors I'm using, the papers, the ink pads, everything is listed for you down in that YouTube description box, along with all of the Penny Black stamps and dies and embossing folders that I'm using. So now I've grabbed that ascending creative die. I've just put a piece of scratch paper underneath that, and I'm going to paint that. So a fun thing to do, especially if you just want to play, is to paint your die cuts. So you can cut them from colored cardstock. If that's your thing, go for it. Or if you like to ink them with distress inks and an ink blending tool, go for it. But it's also a really fun way to play with your watercolors. Or if you're just learning to watercolor, try starting with some die cuts. I think that's a fun place to start. You can see I put down that Evergreen Bough, that lighter color, and then I've just grabbed some Forest Moss, Distress Ink Reinker, and put right up the stem, sort of the center of those leaves. And then I'm just patting where those two colors meet while everything is still wet. Just creates a really pretty effect. These are two colors I love putting together. I'm so sorry I'm a little bit off camera there. I did not realize that. I was just in the zone painting. There we go. And I love the curves of this die. I think it's just so graceful. You can use it all connected like that, or you can trim off little pieces to tuck in different places. I have some butterflies cut here. These are from, again, that Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. I have, with Penny Black's Soaring creative die set and the butterfly and leaves die set, I have an envelope that is just full of those. So again, back to that permission to play. Sometimes I want to do something creative, but I do not want to think, or I don't want to get very much out. That would be like a butterfly die cutting night where I just turn on a show and I sit and die cut a whole bunch of butterflies out of watercolor paper and put them in an envelope. And I'm always thankful that I've done that. And by doing that, it keeps me doing something creative throughout the week. So I'm just painting those in. And I just wanted to show you here that I do like to cut an extra one of these die cuts and then use liquid adhesive to glue them together. It just pops it up a little bit more. It gives it dimension, and it's a much easier way to give dimension to a detailed die like this than trying to put like foam tape behind it. So once I started doing that, I do it all the time now. So I'm just going to assemble this. I'm popping up my embossed panel. Again, I embossed a whole card front and I just trimmed off the corners essentially to make that diagonal going across. And I'm just going to assemble the card here. I'm going to put down my word that gives him a place to stand going across that diagonal. I have foam tape on the top of him and liquid adhesive down on his shoe. So he kind of pops up, but his shoe is down flatter near that hello. And then I have a little secondary sentiment that's popped up on foam squares that I will add. This is from that little guy set. If you haven't looked at the set, they're super cute images and great sentiments to go with them. I love that when there is something that can tie in that image, like "You make my heart sail." And that card is complete. Really, really fun thing to do. So here's that finished card. Now you can take this, you could have flowers coming up from that hello, you could have stamped flowers, die cut flowers, critters. Look at this little guy. This is a woodblock stamp called "I'm So Cute," which he totally is, that I added. And then you can also have something cascading down that diagonal. So that's where I use that die cut and those butterflies, cascading down from the top. So here are still shots of each one of these cards. I would love to know which is your favorite. Do you think you'll use a diagonal anything in any cards coming up? I hope you're feeling inspired. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss the next video in this series. I can't believe the next video is already number 8. And I just thank you so much for watching. If you want to continue to get penny black inspiration daily, follow us on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as Instagram, our website, and blog. Everything is linked and listed for you down in that YouTube description box. Happy stamping!